So today's another part of the process talks, and this one is about centralization versus federation. But I suspect that's not really what this is about. This is about the ever-swinging pendulum of organizational change, where you'll see an organization or group of organizations swing between two completely different approaches, or yeah, that's pretty much it, right? In software engineering, we tend to drive off in a bunch of cul-de-sacs and then come back a little bit because we overdid it. But generally in organizations, one of the patterns you do see is a flip between centralization and federation. And today's message is brought to you by Conway's Law, right? Every change, reminding you that your organizational boundaries do affect the way your systems and your processes operate. And so, just as a reminder, every change is a reaction to some previous outcome or unmet expectation, right? This is like two different things on this slide, but I'm leaving it anyway. And the idea here is the reason you're making a change is because something's not working or you need to improve it, right? There are very few organizations that continually iterate and are aggressive about it over long periods of time. They tend to be, I think, founder-based still, like whatever personality the founder has. Once you get outside of a founder-based organization, you end up with these kind of pendulum swings and these attempts to get by some previous problem. So the pendulum swing, I'm going to give you an example. Skills organizations, sometimes you'll see this, where skills will be centralized for some period of time, and then what will happen is you'll change your process and be like, man, that was a bad idea. Let's push those skills out to the different departments, and we'll federate those people back or matrix them back into our org, and then you'll realize that didn't work, or it worked, but it didn't do what you wanted. And so what ends up happening is you tend to swing by this, and every time you make one of these changes, people fall outside of your org. They fall off, right? Because you do some reorg, and sometimes people do this to get rid of people, but a lot of times it's, oh, that's not working, let's try it, and then people end up getting pushed out. And sometimes you get real benefit out of this, and sometimes you don't. It kind of depends how committed you are. So let me give you some examples. In the tech space, the place you see this used to be a lot was in database administration. Cloud has kind of changed that. It's changed the size of the database mafia, right? And then you have operations and DevOps. You see that flip back and forth. Testing, right, is an example. Do we do a central testing org? Do we run a federated testing org? How does that work? These are patterns. Architects and architecture, you'll see this in software and technical systems a lot. They'll become part of a central org, or they'll be federated out, living in the groups. And those are two models. And in a way, they kind of overlap, right? You can have a central group where everybody's living out and then in the wilderness, right, with all the teams that are doing work. But then it turns out that those people become less and less attached to the central group, right? You have machine learning, you see this, where people want to do some kind of basically any complicated skill that isn't crossed. A lot of people don't have data science. Other areas you'll see this pretty much anywhere there's a level of expertise required. You'll see people flip back and forth in technology. Common services versus shared. This isn't people oriented, but this is an approach. Do I have a bunch of common services in a central group, or do those get pushed out and we all kind of can negotiate around federating with them, or is there some other thing? User experience is another example where you see this switch flip back and forth from a central organization to distributed, because now I can't get my UI and my user experience in time, and so we're going to own it ourselves. But oh crap, that means we need to federate back to the central group, but am I going to listen to them? So that's kind of what you see there. But you really see this a lot in any kind of process organization, because people are always trying to figure out whether there's value in process, and what are those people doing? Do I not, when I don't control them, but if I control them, am I still doing the process thing the right way? So you'll see this with coaching, agile management, project management, quality assurance, right, in this process orientation, which is a little bit like the testing thing, but different. And then you've got customer interaction. You'll see how are we dealing with our customers, those kinds of things. And that's an example where sometimes people want direct control, but they'll own it with some federated resources, or does a central group or process team own that? And analytics, you'll see that, analytical stores, analytical reports, all those kinds of things. Some places you'll have all the analytics people in one group and they do service requests, and the analytics people end up distributed out among the teams with some kind of COP or federation, and you just, you flip back and forth because everything you do is a reaction to the previous, right? So another one would be goals and alignment. This one is a little bit different, but kind of the same. I've seen this a lot where it's not based on skills necessarily, it's based on goals. or desired outcomes. And so you see this a lot where there is going to be some standalone product or analyst or business support or engineering org, right? And they'll all be different stovepipes of themselves, and they'll federate with each other to do work. But what it means is you have centers of excellence for those things. And that comes with its own positives and negatives. And so the opposite of that, of course, is in software engineering, is everybody's in the engineering org, everybody's an engineer. And I know somebody that's going to post about on LinkedIn about this. But the idea here is that you end up with this same pendulum swing. And what you end up doing is every time you pick, you go, I'm going to make all the product people and the analysts be standalone and part of their own back community of practices. And then we decide to put them in engineering, and we nuke those groups, and they have an opportunity to move or not. And Capital One just did this recently with their Agile team, right? And then, we're just going to do everything in engineering. And so you get to apply back for a job that you're, because we've decided that our priorities are different, or it's working or it's not working, or it was the previous person's process. So I'm going to give you some examples of this, why this happens in the standalone side. Why would I want some of my functions, business functions, to not be part of engineering? And that might be engineering has a delivery focus. Engineering you don't think they understand your needs. The company needs a product focus. Needs a customer focus, right? Engineering really tends to focus. Some people are great, but a lot of them are focused on building a system or a product or something. And the question is, do they know do they even go out and check to find out if they're doing the right thing with the same hunger and motivation as the standalone group? And the other reason, always the obvious one, is you had a previous failure somewhere in some launch or some other product or something else, and you believe it was because we were too centralized or some unit didn't get enough focus, and it's not going to happen if they don't have their own org. So really, it's do they have their own org, and does that give them enough focus? So it's usually when you do this, it's bad things happened and no one knew about it because it was all stovepiped out, or people had plausible deniability. I didn't know about that. They weren't part of our org. And so you tend to move that org around so that you can have that accountability in a different place, right? Engineering likes to have everything in a software organization, and that's because they are accountable for delivery, and they don't want to have anybody else in the way of that, and others don't understand the complication of delivery. And they end up with delays because of outside influence and decision-making. And, really, if you move the team into delivery, you get more headcount in your department. And I don't mean like empire building, although that happens. It's really about, that gives me more delivery headcount because those other functions like agile coaching, aren't really needed. Why would we spend money there when we could get, this many more engineers to do this? And then the previous failure was because of the opposite, right? Which is I didn't own enough stuff, or we didn't have enough delivery, or those other people didn't know how to give us the requirements, those kinds of things. And the people that were outside of engineering made unrealistic requests or nonsensical requests when we could handle this better, right? So, the corollary to this is pretty much it's not a corollary. I don't know why I call it that, but it's build a department, destroy a department. That's sort of the equivalent of federation, or the departmental, the Big Bang version of federating and centralizing and changing your organization based on the idea. And that's why the federating versus centralized one is good. The predecessor's good idea, yesterday's predecessor's good idea is today's cost-cutting measure, right? FinTech's nuke entire agile practice. It was great. We don't need it anymore because it's embedded in our process. And you're like, is it? Or is it you just realize that you can get another 100 engineers and get rid of that, and then people will quit whining that other people are looking at their stuff. So I will work on this slide. Build a department, destroy a department. Man, that new line should have been in a different place. So remember, every approach's greatest strength is its greatest weakness, and you will get to experience both of those approaches and their strengths and weaknesses in the next 3 to 7 years in the same organization. Have a great day, and may all your experiences, I don't know what I'm going to say. Have a great day.